We're back. Las Vegas Triathlon Club Member Spotlight 2024. We've had a little bit of a vacation. Hey, Bob, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. It's good to be back with you.
Yeah, I think I need to reintroduce you, but everyone knows Bob Gamble, our co-host of the Las Vegas Triathlon Club Member Spotlight. And tonight we have a special guest, and we wanted to start off with someone that we actually have had on before. But this guest, I'm talking about you in a third person now, I guess, I don't know, is really a special guest and a special part of our club, our organization. And we've got Mr. Ted Girouard. Hey, Ted, how's it going?
It's going good. Long day, but I
Yeah.
taught 3 classes today, and yes, it's good though. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I love it. Well, thanks for doing this, and thanks for kicking our 2024 season of Las Vegas Tri Club Member Spotlights off. And you're just a great guest to have because there's a lot to cover here tonight, and we're gonna really enjoy diving in, and hopefully we can keep this to 30 minutes. We'll see if we can. But before I get going too far, as I always like to do, I like to punt over to Bob Gamble to do the official introduction.
Cool. Thank you, John. And Ted, welcome. It's really wonderful to have you on here. And I always tell everybody that if you ever get a chance to learn from Ted, jump on it, jump on the opportunity. Because
Yeah.
for those who are listening, Ted is a very valuable member of the club, as John mentioned. He's a wealth of information, and not to mention a stellar world-class athlete. I mean, he's a national champion. So we have Ted on here tonight, and a little bit of a background, just a little bit. He is the director of athletic training for UNLV. So that's another reason why he's such a valuable aspect
Yep.
of the club. And national champion in the USAT
Yeah, 2019 long course national champion.
2019 long
Yeah.
course triathlon.
Yeah.
So it's really great to have you on here, Ted. And I wanted to, the reason we wanted to have Ted on first is because we're going to highlight people who like Ted, who contribute to the club and are on the board. And Ted is a board member. So,
I am
Ted,
a board-
I'm just curious if you would tell us your story.
Yeah.
You know, why did you get involved in triathlon in the first place? Yeah. And,
So
how
it's
did
an,
you get involved?
it's an interesting one, right? This I kind of go at this different than a lot of men in this sport. My wife was doing triathlon well before I was. She was started triathlon maybe 5 years before I did. My wife was a collegiate swimmer at UNLV.
Wow.
And she was running a US Masters swim club, which she still does, called Viva Las Vegas Masters. And someone in that group convinced her to do a triathlon.
Mhm.
And I thought it was nuts, right? These people, they would wake up so early, and she'd get running early in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, she's up doing her thing. And Sunday mornings, I'd be hungover, and she'd be out on a 4-hour bike ride or 5-hour bike ride. I'm like, idiots! Why would anyone do that? Dumb. Like, bed is so good, right? And so as she got more into it, I was going to the races, and I remember I went to Oceanside and watched her first 70.3, and I was like, and I'll never do that. Like, there's no way I'll do that. But fast forward just a little bit, I had some health problems. I had some liver issues, and my doctor at the time was like, hey, like, you need to like do something. You need to get in shape. And I'm like, well, I know how to get in shape. Like, I used to run a lot and was a ski racer and did a bunch of things. And I'm like, okay, I'll get into running. And so I started running, and signed up for my first 5K, as you do, and then 10K, and then half marathon. And I was really enjoying it. And I can't remember exactly what year it was, but it was about 5 or 6 months before the Las Vegas Triathlon. And my wife said, you know what I want for my birthday is I want you to do a triathlon with me.
Wow.
And I said, okay, I'll do it. I didn't know how to swim. I literally did not know how to swim. And so I was like, I can't swim with your group, because I knew these people socially, because they would come over to the house for barbecues. And I'm like, I can't, because I don't know how. So I was, swimming at the Las Vegas Athletic Club by myself. And I was like, okay, go down, stand at the end, come back, stand at the end. And I can still remember the first day coming home. So I did 300. Now it took me like 20 minutes, but I did 300, and I was like so like proud. And she's like, okay, good. I'm like, I'm gonna start swimming with you, and I can do 1,000 in one session. And it took me like 3 or 4 months, to get to that. And she came a few times and gave me some pointers, but she wasn't really like coaching me. She was like, just being nice and give me pointers. And then, so I went to my first swim practice, and oh my gosh, it was so horrible. So horrible, because I didn't know any of the verbiage, didn't know any of the terms. I thought a lap was going down and back, not just one way, because swimming's crazy. A lap is one direction, which still boggles my mind that swimming has that. And so I did it. I started swimming, and then a friend lent me a bicycle, and it's actually somebody that I'm coaching now, and shout out to Julie. So she lent me a bicycle, and I can remember the first ride. We parked at Dunkin' Donuts and ride out to the overlook and back, and I was like just devastated for the whole day, right? Like I literally finished that, and I'm like, I gotta be on the couch, like 12-mile bike ride, which for us now, like that's like nothing, right? We're warming up for 12 miles, and then subsequently we were making it to Blue Diamond and back. And then, oh my gosh, the first day I went from my house to Blue Diamond and back instead of from the Dunkin' Donuts, and just slowly we built up. And so then I did the Las Vegas Triathlon that year, and the plan was to do it one time, like one and done, right? And so we did it, and I don't even remember my time or anything, but what I do remember, and it's actually something I feel bad about, is, and this is a subtle brag, but I beat my wife by one place. Like I think I finished like 50th and she finished 51st or whatever. You can look at the official results. I can't remember. And actually I feel really bad about that. I really do. And that, and this is going to be sad, but that was my wife's last race. So my wife's had a lot of health issues since then, and she hasn't been able to do triathlon. And I kind of feel like, man, I shouldn't have beat her, but I didn't know, right? Because like we started in different waves in different times, and but it actually makes me a little bit sad, happy and sad. But that was my journey into triathlon. And then like everybody else, like I was addicted, I was like, okay, because that was the end of the season. And then, okay, next year, what's the first race I could do? So I think I did Rage, and then I did like whatever it's called at the time. And I think it's called St. George Tri or SG Tri. And, got my own bike and just started the journey. And, as you go and you get better and better, you do longer distances and you learn. And, fortunately, I this background in athletic training, and, but I didn't know a lot about endurance sports. And so I just became a sponge and wanted to learn everything I could, and reading the books and reading articles, and a lot of mistakes made. And so I guess that's my journey into triathlon.
Oh, I love it. And you really had a nice steady climb in terms of performance. And I'd like you to just sort of highlight some of your big accomplishments that you did have that you look back and say, wow, that was pretty incredible. And I'll offer to people who listen, they know times, Ted is a consistent 4:30, 70.3 athlete at a variety of different courses. And if you're in a 4 hour and 30-minute range, that is really high level. And it's really neat to see that. And you've done that at several races. So maybe just give a snapshot of some of the big successes that you have had, starting off with a very humble journey that you've started with. What are your big successes?
Well, I'm going to start out with something that's kind of interesting. So my first 70.3 was at St. George, and it was like 2013, I think. And I can remember finishing that. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was the worst thing in my life. And I don't even remember, place at like 45th or something in my age group. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. And I remember like looking at the plaques they were giving to people in the top 5. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like so unattainable. Like those people are so ridiculous. Like how could they be that fast? How can somebody go 4:30 at St. George? Like it's just mind boggling. And then it was like maybe 2 years later, and I was the one, getting the plaques at the 70.3s. And I thought that was just a weird thing, right? Like a year later, I qualified for my first world championship. And actually, I went 4:30 that first time. I could literally a year later, I went 4:30.01, like literally 1 second off. And that was at the World Championship in Mont Tremblant. And that kind of was mind blowing to me as well, right? Like, oh my gosh, I went 4:30. Like that's insane. But truly, like the highlight of my whole career, and it's not winning the national championship, which was exciting, which was the long course world championships. So this was in Penticton in 2017. And it's the first time I ever actually raced for Team Canada. So I'm Canadian. And I had to go and qualify. So I went to a qualifying race, got the spot on the team, and I got a bronze medal. And I was like, so like, it's something special, right? Like, competing with like the Canada jersey on and your name across the chest. And I'll never forget, like I was just racing so good that day. So for those of you that don't know, the long course world championship is kind of halfway between an Ironman and a half Ironman. So the run was a 30K, and so it was 3 10-loop sections. So three 10K loops, excuse me. And I can remember with about 5K to go, and I was losing my toenail. It was not good, and everything in me was like, okay, like, can you do it, right?
That
and
hurts.
I remember passing a guy who I ended up getting to know. It's funny because he was a Team Canada guy, and I remember like every time we hit these out and back, seeing this guy, and I knew he was in my age group, but I didn't know what place I was in. Like I kind of assumed I was in the top 10, to be honest with you, based off of like how I was running. I was running really well, and I passed him, and I think he knew. So he's like, "Oh man, you're doing so good. Go get it." And he's like, "You're in third. Like you're in third." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And I'm like, "Okay, I got 5K to go. I'm in third place in the world championship. I believed I was in third, but my toe was hurting so bad. Like I knew I was going to lose my toenail. Like it's coming off, right? And every step was just like pure torture. Like I can still remember that. But then also on the other side of my mind, like, you can't quit. You're in third place at the world championship in Canada, your home country. My family was all there. I had friends that came in to watch this race. And I had different places and people on different corners, like cheering specifically for me. And I'm like, okay, like, I gotta do this. And I slowed, but I didn't slow, too much. And then I still didn't know for sure that I was in third. So you don't know. Like this guy, I think he was kind of calculating, and I didn't have it figured out. And I know subsequently now, like the bikes or the numbers were in age groups. So we didn't have age groups on our calves, but like number like 1,400 and something to 1,800 was like the age group. You know what I mean? So he was keeping track, but I wasn't. And so when I get to I don't know, I have about 200 meters to go, and I'm on my last lap. A lot of people are obviously still like have another lap. And someone runs out and gives me a Canadian flag. And
No.
so any of the podium people, like they had it on radio, like the country's team leaders would have had flags for you to run in with. So they gave me a flag, and I'm like running in with it. I'm like, does that mean, like, what does that mean? Because I didn't know this, right? Like this is my first time at one of these races. And so I crossed the finish line, and this lady who I don't even know from like the Team Canada contingent, she's like, "Hey, congratulations on the podium." And I'm like what? And I can still remember like my mom and my wife running over because they're on a tracker, right? They're like, "You got third place," and I'm like, "What?" Like blew my mind to like be on a podium of a world championship, and that's still like the fondest memory. Like having my family there, my parents there, friends from Calgary, they came out for it. And then going to like the ceremony afterwards and like giving they give you the flag, and like that was pretty special. It was pretty special. I did lose the toenail, which adds into the story. So 2 weeks later was the Chattanooga 70.3 Worlds, and I was trying to go back to back.
Yeah.
And I couldn't train for basically those 2 weeks because my toenail was in such bad shape. And so then I subsequently raced there and did not do as well because like my toe was just a mess. Like I literally ran the day before, and but still, like, and then to do those back to back was pretty special, and it was really fun. My parents actually drove from Penticton to Chattanooga to watch both races, which was pretty cool. But so that's the fondest memory for sure, and my proudest proudest
You
moment.
know, you actually just gave me one big goosebump. I was like, it turned me into a goosebump on that whole story.
Thanks.
One of the things that really impressed me about that story, and I'm sure other people too, is the fact that you talked about how you started and you went, one length of the pool at a time, and then you know 300 yards was when you first started. You didn't know how to swim, and then you were not at a fast swimmer or biker, and then you got into the world championship and got a third. So I mean,
Yeah.
there's two things I want to break down on that. One is you overcame a boatload of adversity as well in this whole process. And there's a story that I remember hearing, something about you breaking your collarbone in a
Oh,
race. So, and that's something that I think there should have been a Ted Girouard Badassery Award or something, because for those, I'm going to let you tell it. You broke your collarbone on the
I
bike,
didn't break my collarbone actually. So I actually separated my shoulder. So
separated your shoulder.
so basically there's some ligaments that hold your collarbone down, and I crashed and they were no longer holding my collarbone down. So they call that a separated shoulder or an acromioclavicular separation. So yeah, I did do that that was actually the national championship I won. So that's when I was really badass. So that was 2019 in Miami. And the story goes, I'd been to that race, the US national championship. This was my third time. I finished second twice in a row. And I was going there for one purpose, and that was to win, right? Like when you've been second twice at a national championship, like, it's great. Like, don't get me wrong, like getting silver medals is awesome. But I had one job that day, and that was to win the national championship. And I honestly, I was riding super hard, like, but exactly where I needed to be. Like my watts were exactly what I needed to be. I was a little too aggressive on the bike, and I'll admit it. Like I was riding too aggressively, and I took a left-hand turn, and I just passed somebody, so I wasn't on the right angle to make the left-hand turn at the speed I needed to be, and my wheel caught like a pothole, my front wheel. It straightened the wheel out, and I saw some grass in front of me. I'm like, okay, I'll just ride out into the grass. I was on the brakes already, but in the grass there was a pothole, and so my front wheel, gets lodged in the pothole, and I go over the top, and it was kind of funny because, not funny, I can look back on it now and laugh. There was a lot of people in that corner, and because it's a national championship, there's a bunch of people, and people come running over to me. Oh my gosh, are you okay? I'm just like freaked out, right? Because like the adrenaline is just going, right? Like I've been on the limit. I think it was mile 30 on the bike, and it's 70.3, so I had 26 miles to go. But I was on my limit as far as like where I needed to be, like not at my threshold, but I'm pretty close. And I'm like, all I was thinking about the people passing me, right? Yeah, my shoulder hurts. I hit my head pretty hard. I think I may have a little concussion at the time as well. And so obviously, like, look at the bike. My bike computer alarm is going off, and it's texting Marie, my wife. You know how they have that when you crash on your bike and your bike computer can call somebody. My phone wasn't attached though, so I couldn't actually call her. So it's the alarm's going off. People are like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" I'm like, "Is my bike okay?" Right? Like pressing the button to get the alarm off. I'm like, "No, I'm good. I'm good. Like, we can call you an ambulance." I'm like, "No, I'm good." So I get on the bike and I start riding, and I'm like, holding onto the handlebars. I'm like, oh, that's not good. Like, I think at the time I thought I broke my collarbone. I'm like, okay, like, can I get into aero? So I get into aero, but I can only put pressure on one arm. And it comes to my realization, like my front water bottle was almost empty. And I'm like, I can't like reach to get my second water bottle because my right arm was the one that was injured. I literally could not reach, like, at all. And my left arm I couldn't reach because my right arm couldn't steer the bike. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get pretty thirsty here. So there's only one aid station left, and I go by it. I'm like, well, I'll just grab a water bottle, but not thinking with my right. So couldn't grab a water bottle. So anyways, by now I'm like, I know my collarbone's either broken or my shoulder separated. I'm like, I can't, like, I can ride, like, and I was riding good power still, but I'm like, I can't run. There's no way I can run. So I'm just gonna but like the only other option to get back is to take an ambulance back or something. So I'm like, I might as well just race the rest of the way. And then I'm going to, like, when I get to T2, I'm going to be done. So coming into T2, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how to get off my bike. Like, I'm just like, I can't contemplate because I can't use my arm. So finally I'm like, okay, I can't do a flying dismount. That's for sure. So I get off the bike, and I literally get off the bike and I walk it to the bike rack. So I'm like, I'm done, right? But I get there and there's no other bikes like around me. And it was all set up by age group. So I know I'm in first place. So I literally sat down because I'm like, I got to change my shoes if I'm going to try this. So I sit down, change my shoes, contemplate. I'm like, okay, like I'm going to run. Like I have to. I'm in first place. And I got 13.1 miles to go, and it is hot, right? We're Miami. It's 85% humidity, like 85 degrees. It was hot. And so I start running, and I made it like the first mile, and I'm almost throwing up because of the pain in my shoulder. Every step I take is just like someone stabbing me. And so I kind of figure out like, okay, I got to keep this thing stable. So I ended up like tucking my thumb in my shorts. You know what I mean? Like, because I wasn't wearing a one piece. So like, kind of trying to create like a little splint, or a little sling. And I can remember like a guy passed me that was in my age group. So we had it on the calves. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in second. And I see a medical cart, like a gator that was all, set up for medical. And I'm like, okay, I might as well just be done. Like I'm in second. And I'm like, well, my friend Todd, who was at the race with me, he was in an age group, a couple age groups up, and he started quite a bit behind me, just where they started. I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to wait an hour and a half or 2 hours for Todd. Well, I might as well just run. Like, might as well just run. So I just kept running, and by splinting myself a little bit, it was okay. But man, it's hard to run with one arm, especially when you're fatigued. And with about a mile and a half to go, I passed the guy. No one else passed me in my age group. And so I passed the guy, and I'm like, I think I'm in first place. Like with a mile and a half to go, right? But like, there's no way. Because I actually ended up running like a 141 or something like that. So it wasn't that fast, but my bike was really fast that day. Even with the crash, it was really fast. And so, I crossed the line, and sure enough, like comes up second place. I'm like, oh my, okay, second place again. Dang it. Like I thought, like, but I really was just concerned about my shoulder. And I was second place by about 20 minutes. And I'm like, oh, well, I mean, even on my best day, if I run a 130, I'm going to lose. Well, they messed up. And one of the pros who was in my age group, they had him in my age group instead of in the pro race. So I did win, but I didn't know I won until later. And actually, even when they announced the podium, they had the other guy, and someone come out, no, he's a pro. Like this guy's the champion. And then I didn't really know. So it was kind of fun. But I'll add one little funny story. So I get to, like, I'm pretty upset, obviously. Like my shoulder is messed up, and I know, I know exactly. But at this point, I know it's not broken. I know I've separated my shoulder. So I get back to the car. Todd hasn't finished yet. It's just he and I there. And I call my wife, and she's like, I'm coming to Miami. I'm flying now. And I'm like, no, you're not. My flight is home tomorrow. Like, there's no way you can be able to get here and help me. She's like, well, Todd is going to help you. And I think you have a concussion. I'm talking to you, and you have a concussion. And you've got to go to the hospital and get checked out. I'm like, no, I'm not going to the hospital. But I can still remember that phone call. And my sweet wife, she calls Todd, and she's like, you take care of Ted. Concussion.
Oh, I love it. Well, I love that story because one, it is a huge success story, but it's also, as Bob even mentioned, you had overcome some adversity. And, this is the thing about triathlon is it's not always the successes that sort of define us. And sometimes overcoming challenges is something that defines us. And this is a good example of that. But since then, you've run into some more adversity. And I know you and I have talked, and you're very open. You're an open book on this. And I think that's really great for people to hear some of the challenges that you've been faced with outside of triathlon that have impacted the way that you participate in triathlon or your involvement with triathlon, and that has really evolved over time. So maybe talk a little bit about, from on the other end of things, more the adversity issues that you've had to deal with.
Yeah, sure. And I know everybody, or not everybody, a lot of people in triathlon deal with adversity. And we were talking about, setting up this call. I was really thinking about, like, obviously I've had some huge successes in triathlon and I'm super proud of them, but they're not like the things I'm like really like most proud of. And even like that race where I, injured myself and still won, and like that's super cool. I don't always think it's the successes that define you. And I'm obviously I'm a mentor to students at the university, and I've got this group of students that they spend 2.5 years with me, and it's really a unique thing in our program. And it's one of the things I always try and do is inspire them through adversity. And so I'll just tell you some background stuff. So in 2020, like the year that basically was it 2021, maybe, I don't know, what was the first year we raced after COVID? I can't remember. 2021, right? Like spring, I think so. Anyways,
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I think it was 2021. Yeah.
so that spring we were set up to race at Oceanside, and the Monday before I was diagnosed with shingles, and I was devastated because like we've just come out of COVID. Actually, we raced in the fall at St. George in a 70.3, and I did really well. I was super happy. I was fit. I was on the podium in St. George, which I had never been on the podium in St. George before. And I had a great winter of training. Like everything was kind of like coming up really well. I think I ran a 1:25 half marathon open like in the winter. I was like ready, and I got shingles, and I was advised not to race. And for those of you that know triathletes, it doesn't matter, right? Like you're advised not to race, but you're going to race anyways. And I didn't like, if you've had shingles, it's horrible. Like it is one of the most painful things. Like it actually made my shoulder issues not like anything compared to shingles. And I didn't sleep like that entire week. And I can still remember like us driving down. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can race. And my wife's like, you shouldn't race. And the doctor's like, you shouldn't race. And but I did. And I didn't do well. I mean, I struggled. I mean, I finished, I struggled. And subsequently I started to, feel better, like a little bit, I don't know, a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks later. And then we had the Ironman World Championship was coming up in St. George. And I just never recovered. I was like, every session I was doing was just garbage. Like I couldn't ride, like back then I was riding 5-6 hours on a Sunday, and I couldn't get through 2-hour rides. My knees were hurting. Every little area of my body was just like not responding to the training. I can remember we went to St. George for like a little training camp, like 3 weeks before the race. It was planned out. We're going to go do this. And I rode like one loop of the course, like the Bayo loop. And I had to go home. I was like, I couldn't do it. And so subsequently we raced that race, and I know a lot of people struggled that day. Obviously I struggled. I finished, struggling, and I finished. And then the next day I had another flare up of shingles. So it was still in my body the entire time. It was just, kind of sitting there, I guess, dormant. And so I went back on the shingles medication, and subsequently took some time off, and then started up training again. And honestly, like since then, I've never been able to train like I wanted to. And I've been bouncing around from like injury, illness. And I think that I hate to admit it, but I think like I destroyed myself. And it's hard to kind of wrap your head around that you did this to yourself, but I accept the responsibility. Like I could have not raced that day, right? And that would have, looking back, would have been the right thing to do. And but also like I know me, like if I was to have the exact same situation again, I would do the same thing. I wouldn't now in retrospect, right? But at the time, and I partially, like, this is going to sound bad, but I partially blame the triathlon establishment. And I know this sounds weird, but by not allowing people to get out of races
That's right.
and get your money back, right? And I know we have the Flex 90 thing now, but like part of it was like I'd invested so much money, right? Into it was like $450 or a race entry. And it's like, well, I'm not getting my money back, so I might as well do it. And it's a kind of a crummy thing, right? That the race establishment has gotten to this point where non-transferable and you can't get your money back. And I think that there's something that triathlon establishment needs to change, because people will race injured and will race sick. And I don't think it's good for the sport in the long term. And even if they offer something like a 50% money back or something, and let's say all you have to do is have a doctor's note, right? Like we do this at school all the time. Kids can miss school, miss tests. They just have a doctor's note saying, they're excused, right? So, why, maybe I'm getting angry, but maybe things would be different or I don't know. But anyways, what I want to get at is during this time and where I'm at now, we're in 2024. I've subsequently had some surgeries. I think we talked about it on other podcasts. I've had a urethral reconstruction surgery. I just had, I've had multiple PRP injections in different spots in my body. I'm trying to like get healthy and to do what I need to do. But I just keep fighting. And like, I'm not quitting triathlon by any means. If anything, I'm more desperate than ever to do it. Like, like I can only run right now like about a half hour, and like that's just all I've got. And in riding right now I can go about 2 hours in zone 2, but I can't do much more than that. And I know like it's there deep down inside, and I keep fighting like it's going to come back. And but in the meantime, I've had more time, and I've had time to reflect, and I've also had time to give back. So like things like being involved in the Tri Club. I was not a board member for many years. I was the educational ambassador, which was great. But it's like, okay, I've got a little bit more time to give. I started coaching, and Bob, you were the first person to get me to coach, by the way.
And just so everybody knows, Ted is such an outstanding coach. I mean, I could go off for a half hour, but
Bob convinced me to coach, by the way. I didn't want to.
And he gave me a 1 hour and 7 minute PR on a 70.3. And that's unheard of. And that was all him.
So no, you did the work. But anyways, like, so I started a coaching business. When I was coaching Bob, I hope the IRS isn't listening, but I wasn't like, reporting things to the to the authorities. But now I have a legitimate coaching business, and it's great. Like I actually get so much joy out of coaching now. It's funny, like sometimes it's better than me racing. Like when you can work with somebody and help them and help them get over those, like the training humps, and it can be really, really rewarding. It's a lot like teaching at the university. When the students do well, like you feel accomplished. And so then there's been that. And then, John and I just this fall started working with the UNLV Triathlon Club, which is new at UNLV. And I've invested a lot of time and effort into them. And in some ways it's better. Like it's better than the racing myself. Like, watching these kids, like, at Pumpkin Man, we had 6 kids like that we were working with, help them, to finish their first triathlon. And that's super rewarding. And
are you saying it's better to give than receive?
Yeah, it is. And it's true, right? Like I think about it, like when I give somebody a gift, I get way more joy than receiving one. Now, don't get me wrong, Bob, I really appreciate the lemons. Those was an awesome. But I'd have felt better if I gave you lemons.
Right, I understand.
And I know that when you gave them to me, it made you feel good, right? Like, and I think we tend to forget that in sports sometimes, where it's like a lot of like about yourself. And one of the things I've kind of promised myself as I hopefully get back to racing high level triathlon is to kind of keep that in mind, right? Like it's like, I don't know, this is like globally good to do triathlon and to help others along this journey. And not because triathlon's so great, because I don't know how great triathlon is. Like, I really don't. It's that I think that having a community is what's great, right?
Right.
And like, I feel like the people in the Las Vegas triathlon community are awesome people, and they're awesome people everywhere, right? I'm sure, like in the bowling leagues, they're awesome
Baseball,
people.
little
Baseball,
league and things.
whatever it is, right? I think that, you know, the sense of community that we create around ourselves, we just have to have something common, right? And for us right now, like, triathlon's the common tie that joins us together. And I enjoy it, but I think I enjoy it because I enjoy that, you know, that community. And it's weird, right? We have this individual sport where we spend many hours training by ourselves, but it's the community that brings, I think it's what holds you in it for a long time, right? And I think the people that do triathlon, that they do one and they never do another one again, I feel like I'm happy for them for doing it, but I also feel like they missed out on the best part. And the best part is not like just, hey, I finished the triathlon and I'm the greatest of all time. I finished triathlon. It's the hanging out at the races afterwards,
Yep.
and it, you know, the community around, like doing a group ride or a group run or like the swim group or whatever it is. I think that that's like, to me, that's what I'm enjoying the most. And really the coaching, like, I coach 8 athletes, and that's all I coach. I don't want any more. But if somebody drops out, I'll pick up another one. But
Right.
I have 8, like, I feel like it's 8 friends, even though, like, you don't know, they pay me, but I don't charge very much. And I do it for, like, I don't need, like, I hate to say this because they're probably listening, I don't do it for the money. Like, part of the reason I charge them is to hold them accountable. Right. But I enjoy, like, the conversations we have, and like when we have our Zoom calls or we have our coffees, you know, I'm big on having coffee with the athletes. Like, that to me is like so fun, just to sit and talk to people about their journey. Basically what you all are doing every week when you do these spotlights, like I'm doing with the athletes I coach all the time, and you become part of their life and part of their journey. And I think that's really special.
Man, I'm so glad you brought that up about it at the end, about so people can hear how much it helps to help others and how good it makes you feel. And I'm glad. I mean, you're a champion, and still that's what makes you feel good is your involvement in the club. And so I'm glad you went off on that. And that was going to be my next question, and you beat me to it. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
John?
This is great, Ted. I really appreciate the honesty, and you know, talking about the challenges that you've had, and not losing sight that you enjoy triathlon for the sake of enjoying triathlon, and it's not necessarily the podiums or what have you. It's really just that lifestyle and having that mindset.
Community.
I know we're long, but maybe just one more question and insight from you is, you know, you've not only dealt with one challenge, you've dealt with 2, you've dealt with 3, and I know that because we've talked a lot, and you keep going. And maybe talk a little bit about what drives you and how you're able to overcome these challenges and to keep a really good mindset, because after one hit, some people can maybe get through that. After a second one or a third one, that's really a big challenge. So maybe talk a little bit about your mindset in getting through these tough spots.
Yeah, well, I think about it. I think about it a lot. Like, what's, like, tomorrow morning, my bike is right here. Why am I going to get on the bike? Right? Like, why am I going to wake up early and get on that bike? And is it just because I've always done it? Is it habit? Right? Like this, and I guess I haven't always done, but for the last decade, that's what I've always done. But I don't think it's habit. I think it's, I like how training makes me feel, even when I'm not training well. Sometimes it's frustrating, right? Like when I'm spinning around at 150 watts, which used to be 220 watts, like that, for that effort. But I like when I get off the bike and I feel like the sense of accomplishment. And it's really weird because I've had lots of accomplishment in my life, right? Like I've got a great job, I've got a great wife, I've got I got 7 bikes in my garage, right? Like life is good. And so it's not like I need these little affirmations, but maybe I do, right? Like the affirmation of like, you finish your bike ride and you're like, yeah, okay, I can ride. Like I can still do it. And and honestly, like I want to be healthy, and I feel like this is a way for me to be healthy. And as I get older, and I'm talking to two guys that are older than me, and I recognize that. I want to fight the aging process, right? And I know like the research is pretty clear on this. If we stay cognitively attached to people and we stay physically fit, that the aging process is slowed. And I know we can't stop it. Like I know that. Like I'm not but I think that that's part of it too. Is I want to live. I want to have a long health span, and I want to live a healthy life and a long healthy life. My grandfather passed away like about 2.5 years ago now, and he was 100. And he, for a job, he was a mailman, but like one of those ones that would go door to door, like a car kind of mailman. And so his whole career was walking. And then when he retired, he walked every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the winter, it was in Canada, he'd cross country ski probably till he was 90, he cross country ski. And even when he was like, the year he turned 100, he would still walk like at least a mile every day. And I attribute a lot of his long life to that, right? To just every day doing something. And it's actually something that I even tell my students, like every day I want to do something that's, productive for my health. And so maybe it's that too, is like, I know that this is healthy for me, or maybe I'm lying to myself because I'm always injured and hurt ever since that. But I think that's, once again, maybe not the thing, but I guess that's why, John.
I love it. And again, your honesty and your self-reflection has just been really great. And I know that, your triathlon career isn't over. And you've had, you started in a very humble beginning, and then you became a very high-performing athlete, just tremendous success. And now you're just in a different phase of your triathlon journey. And I think it really is neat to see you evolve as you go through. And really, I think at the end of the day, you're going to be just such an even better triathlete as you exit this phase. Mm-hmm. And I think we just have to give a big credit that your success is because you're on a good team. Your wife got you into the sport, and you two are so great together, and it's so neat to see you supporting each other. And that's part of your community, and it really starts at home, and you do so wonderful job of cultivating that relationship too.
Well, now I'm gonna have to have her watch this. Now you said that, I'm gonna have to have her watch this because she's at swim practice right now.
Oh, okay. I love it.
Hey, and Ted, hearing about your grandfather and at 100 and your evolution. This is laying the groundwork for another podcast. I mean, I could really we could launch off on this. There's a lot of questions that brings up. So thanks again. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thankfully, John and I have another podcast.
Yeah.
What's that?
Thankfully, John and I have a podcast. So, for those of you that don't know, John's a co-host. John and I are co-hosts on the Evidence-Based Triathlon podcast. And we'll be podcasting tomorrow night. Maybe this is a road we'll go down. But, thank you
it is good.
For inviting me on and for the opportunity to share my journey and to share my story with others. I really do appreciate your time and you inviting me.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and thanks again, Ted. Great talking.
Bye-bye, guys.